Would you restart after losing the battle for humanity? Make money? Train? Build the strongest party? A man having lost the battle to the 8 evils and 8 virtues, he was presented with the option to start over. Born able to instantly access the Awakener system, giving him a huge advantage before the day of beginnings when the world turned into chaos. He used his knowledge of his past life to monopolize the world, giving him the best possible start. Welcome to our Manhwa recap for today, Past Life Returner, enjoy. In a brutal fight between 2 unknown groups, a man is hiding under rubble, severely wounded. Being at death's doorstep, the man had no other choice but to return back in time to prevent chaos from happening. To rewrite his fate using a mysterious scroll, the man took this chance to relive his life and turn back time to the moment he was born. After accepting the conditions, including the loss of all the abilities that the man gained, he was immediately sent back to February 28, 1985, the exact date of his birth. The man, now a child in his mother's womb, his mother was experiencing a hard labor, putting her life in danger. But the man being born, he was blessed with the skill man who overcomes adversity, along with the overcoming adversity achievement. This skill allowed the man's body to nullify pain and during the duration of the skill. When he is unable to fight, all the user's skills go up a rank. A trait so strong that it can help in turning any situation in the user's favor even if he were to lose consciousness. The system now giving the man a quest, becoming healthy. The man progressed and his stats are now increasing. The man realizes that this might be the reason why the first evil was so strong. We are then introduced to the 8 evils and the 8 virtues. The main difference between them is that the virtues followed the system while the evils rejected them. Their perspective of the system was what separated them, but in reality, all of them were powerful and all of them used their strength for their own gains. In his past life, the man and his group fought against the first evil as well as the other evils and virtues, but losing the battle with the first evil, who was overly familiar with being an awakener. The man was now in the same situation, able to become an early awakener. Because of the man turning back time, murmuring for the status window, he was able to become the first awakened person in the world. Able to access quests as an infant, the man was already a major step ahead of everybody, and for being the first to become an awakened person, the man was rewarded a challenger box, and opening it obtained a deity-level skill called Odin's Wrath. The challenger box was the object that gave the man the ability to time travel back in his past life, but Odin's Wrath bestowed upon him this time around a main skill of the 6th virtue. He recalled the time when it was used on his guild, eliminating half of them in a flick of a finger, and unable to fathom that the power was now his, he knew he could stand a chance against the evils of the future. The man asleep starting to cry, his parents embrace him, and in that moment he was truly determined to save all his loved ones. On a seemingly normal day, as Sun casually strolled the streets and talked to his acquaintance on the phone, screams and chaos erupt from his acquaintance's phone and the call suddenly drops. In that moment, a lady's body hit the ground right in front of him. His surroundings then becoming chaotic as citizens began running away from monsters. Sun, who was scared for his life as he began to run away from the monsters, but a system window appears. The system transporting him and numerous citizens to a place called Testing Site, where all of them had to fight for their survival. The day of beginnings began. As monsters kept pouring through a dimensional rift, selected people who awakened were transported to the testing site, where some spent months battling ferocious monsters and some even spent decades in that traumatizing world. Those who returned from the testing site didn't have the chance to celebrate and process everything completely, because upon returning to their world, they were immediately faced by monsters in a gruesome battle. Even with the help of modern weapons and the awakened, humanity was still pushed back to the edge, forcing them to use their greatest weapon, nukes. However, even with a devastating weapon, humanity still failed, and the 8 virtues and 8 evils watched and indulged themselves as an entire country fell into ruins. During nighttime, when everyone is asleep, Sun sneaks out of bed and completes another quest, thus receiving another reward, making huge leaps of accomplishments for just walking 10 steps. On the 29th day of the month, during Thanksgiving, Sun finally meets his Nuna, Jia, who, in his previous life, went missing during the day of beginnings. With Jia's company, Sun was able to complete yet another quest by saying 10 sentences to someone as an infant. This time, instead of getting a reward, Sunho was given the choice to skip a huge portion of his infancy and childhood. knowing he would love to spend as much time with his parents as possible. Preparing for the day of beginnings needed to begin as soon as possible, so skipping his infancy son who grew up quickly. The year is 1997. A guy wearing a hoodie is brawling with a thug in the middle of a crowd, as the man wearing a hoodie carefully weaved and evaded the thug's attack. The hooded man saw a chance to launch a counterattack that left his opponent unconscious with just one punch. With a commanding presence, the guy wearing a hoodie ordered an older man to bring him stronger opponents. Later on, as he takes off his hoodie and cap, it is revealed that the strong individual is actually Sehun, our main character. With the body of a young adult, Sehun's abilities like strength and perception are better than most pro athletes. Being an awakener also gave Sehun the ability to heal faster than normal people. Being only 13 years old, Sunhoo had already dominated the entirety of Seoul. Due to his desire to level up faster, Sunhoo was able to recall an F-rank dungeon that was sealed in the mountains located in Gyeonggi Province's Hwaseong City. With this in mind, Sunhoo's next goal was to earn money to buy the property and purchase everything that was necessary for his plan to sail smoothly. Sunhoo, knowing the future, earning money was easy, but as he was a teenager, he could not borrow money to earn money. While pondering, he remembered a scene from his past where he was betrayed by his teammates stealing a reward they got from raiding a dungeon. Moving on, with his insignia of destruction, Sunhoo was able to defeat the men with ease. Moments later, Jonathan arrived and healed Sunhoo with his insignia of healing. Sunhoo knew Jonathan to be an A-rank awakener and a traitor by profession before chaos engulfed the world. In his current life, Sunhoo needed someone he could trust to act on his behalf, and Jonathan, being someone who he trusted in the past, recalled his job he had before becoming an awakener. Sunhoo needed Jonathan's help to achieve his goal. With the knowledge he had taken back with him from his previous life, Sunhoo knew exactly how to grab Jonathan's attention as a traitor. Achieving his goal of establishing a connection with Jonathan, Sunhoo quickly put his plan into action, and with his information about the Thai bot and the events moving forward in the trading industry, everything was going according to plan. In 1992, it only took 50 days for the hedge funds to completely destroy the British currency, the UK pound. Since this happened to a relatively huge and strong currency, almost all of the traders were sure that the same would happen to the Thai baht, the currency used in Thailand. Thanks to Sunhoo retaining his memories from his past life, he knew that the Thai baht would not fall so easily. Exchanging emails with the young Jonathan about the trade idea, Jonathan was thrown off his game and the trader started to question his moves. Being offered an absurd proposal by a stranger that he goes independent, Jonathan is out of his wits. While Jonathan's colleagues secured deals from major investors that the Thai baht would fall by May. The young trader was dumbfounded by Sunhoo's information that Thailand's banking system would prevent that and the currency would actually increase substantially. After discussing this possible outcome with his boss, Jonathan was ridiculed for this absurd idea and was advised that if he continued to push through with this foolishness, he should leave his job immediately. Jonathan's colleagues gradually losing all respect for him because of his take on the situation. Jonathan received constant hate until May, where the bot started to rise, shocking him and his colleagues. Jonathan realized that the stranger he had talked with was right and that he could trust him. As panic took over the office Jonathan was working in, he was called by the boss to meet the VIPs of the company to explain the situation, but little did they know that Jonathan, with his newfound trust in a stranger he hadn't met in person, would do the unthinkable. At that very moment, Jonathan quit his job, reminding his boss when he told him to leave. He walked out ready to start his own company, confident about the new path he is about to take. As Jonathan was leaving his office, he sent an email to Sunhoo saying he had quit his job and would accept Sunhoo's unbelievable proposal after meeting in person, to which Sunhoo immediately replied, "Understood. Come to Seoul. Right now." Sunhoo thought to himself about how he wasn't sentimental about the new middle school life he had, and as Sunhoo stood in the hallway, other students were doubting if he was really a middle schooler or a repeater because of his physique. During this, Sunhoo said to himself that it would actually be better if the other students did not approach him, and as the hallways cleared and the students disappeared from sight, Sunhoo was plagued by the memories he had from his previous life. The haunting image of the destroyed city where many lives were unfortunately lost would still follow Sunhoo even in this timeline as he stared off into the distance, lost in thought. Sunhoo's teacher began tearing up as she watched him, quickly running away, wondering what was wrong with her. Jonathan arrives in Seoul and immediately meets up with Sunho. Both characters are shocked. Sunho by Jonathan's looks and Jonathan by how good Sunho's English is. Jonathan, unaware that the kid in front of him was the man who gave Jonathan the information about the Thai bot, he unknowingly complimented the emails he received from Sunho, and to his surprise, he quickly learned that the kid in front of him was responsible for his fortune. After learning the fact that he believed the words of a kid, Jonathan was furious. Seeing the anger in Jonathan's eyes, Sunho felt like he just met the Jonathan he once knew. Thankfully, Sunho had something that would instantly change the foreigner's mind, angrily grabbing the papers Sunho was pulling out. Upon laying his eyes on the documents, Jonathan was shocked by the information Sunho had regarding the role of hedge funds in the trading business. Predicting the surrender of the Thai government after putting up a fight against the hedge funds, Jonathan was in awe of what was presented in front of him. Intimidated by Sunho, Jonathan was asked by the kid if he was worthy of working with him based on everything he had shown him. Jonathan trod lightly so as to not underestimate Sunho because of his age. After a short discussion, Jonathan said he needed time to think, and to honor his request, Sunho gave him until June 3rd to decide. Finding this odd, Jonathan asked why it was set to a specific date. Just then, he realized something so bizarre looking back at the chart Sunho gave him. Jonathan speculated that Sunho had predicted the trend of the trade and when it was happening. Knowing that this is impossible and that to be able to predict the trend down to the date would only be possible if one was a god, Sunho just grinned and told Jonathan that he was truly meeting a god at that moment then. Satisfied with his progress with Jonathan, Sunho left with confidence and told Jonathan that the offer would still stand until June 3rd and that if he didn't decide by then, it would mean the end of their relationship. A few days later, Sunho received an email asking what they should name their company, taking it as he was successful in his endeavor in acquiring Jonathan's assistance. After accepting Sunho's offer, Jonathan regretted not buying into his proposal much earlier, seeing how his predictions were spot on. As they discussed the details of their new venture, Jonathan attempting to come up with a company name utilizing both of their names, Sunho asked that his name not be used for personal reasons. Jonathan revealing his $400,000 investment into the company, asking if Sunho could add more funds, his response left Jonathan stunned. Sunho stating if he had access to that kind of money he would not have needed Jonathan. Jonathan wanted to know why he picked him to be his partner. Sunho blatantly explained that he chose him because of their website and not for some other reason, which led Jonathan to utter a line Sunho had heard him say in his previous life: "It never comes when you desperately ask for it." The same line Jonathan used when he opened the master box he bought using his points. Sunho knew him to be a man who had chosen to give up everything he was rewarded with. Obtaining a powerful skill from a challenger box that he was planning to save up for, but no hope left, decided to open a master box. Jonathan obtaining the skill, Sunho tried to persuade him from exacting revenge. But unable to convince him, his last memory of Jonathan was him walking to what he now knows was his friend's death. After all that, Jonathan and Sunho finalized the documents where Jonathan was shocked at Sunho's 12-year age, but the partnership and their company official. Sunho quickly presented him with another crazy trade: to bet all their money with a 50x leverage, meaning they would be in huge debt if Sunho's trade idea was wrong. Jonathan was shocked to the core with the huge risk, as the $400,000 initial investment would turn into $20 million they would need to pay back. Jonathan put all his trust in Sunho and went all in. A few days later, Jonathan flew back to Seoul looking horrible as he told Sunho his prediction was correct and they made $280 million, a 700x of their initial $400,000. With their last trade being a huge success, Sunho immediately plans ahead and tells Jonathan to trust him completely and go all in once again with their $200 million profit. While Jonathan hesitated with this idea since it was an even bigger risk than last time, Sunho convinced him to trust him completely. In order to prepare for this tremendous risk, Sunho asked Jonathan to fly to Bangkok to gather information on the current status of the Thai baht from the Central Bank of Thailand. With this, Jonathan agreed with Sunho and flew to Bangkok the very next day. While Jonathan was out gathering info, Sunho was out making preparations of his own. We see Sunho participate again in a street fight with a gangster. This time, Sunho breaks his opponent's arms easily, and after a heated argument, we see Sunho in a secluded area surrounded by biker gang members. Thinking he needed an unconventional training method to increase his stats, Sunha barehandedly took on the armed bikers, dominating the entire fight, seeing all of his opponents' openings. Sunha weaved and avoided their attacks and was able to overpower them without using Odin's wrath, which he felt like the system was screaming at him to use. As Sunhu was busy fighting off against the goons, their leader was getting annoyed seeing them lose to him. So taking matters into his own hands, he decided to ram his motorcycle against Sunhu, causing him to fall over in excruciating pain. As he laid on the ground, Sunhu was being beaten to a pulp by his countless opponents, and then during this crisis, it happened. Sunha's skill, Man Who Overcomes Adversity, was activated. Upon the activation of his skill, Man Who Overcomes Adversity, Sunhu's capabilities were raised exponentially from rank F to E. With this, Sunha's perception, strength, dexterity, and even his skill, Odin's Wrath, became stronger. Able to one-shot his opponents and blast the leader's motorcycle to bits, Sunha walked away from the scene revered as a monster by those who watched him. While Sunhu was training his body like usual, assessing the conditions for his skill's activation and how he would use it, he received an overseas phone call from Jonathan saying his predictions about the entire situation were right. Sunhu then revealed that the D-Day for their operation was on July 2nd. On that date, they would go all in with the $200 million. A few days later, Sunhu received an email from his partner saying, "Attack preparation complete." With this, Sunha felt relief since all his efforts were finally bearing fruit, but he still reminded himself that he had a long way to go. As Sunha sat in his classroom, he was anxious about the current situation in the trading industry and how well they were doing. As soon as classes were over, Sunha requested his homeroom teacher to allow him to go home because he felt unwell. Puzzled by how he does not recall his homeroom teacher from his previous life, Sunha brushed it off and went straight home. As soon as Sunhu established a connection with Jonathan, he was shocked about what had already happened moments after they started trading. During that short amount of time, their money had already grown 300x, coming up to $60 billion. After a short up and down exchange in the profits, Sunhu decided to stop and cash it all in to avoid further losses, as the timeline he once knew was being affected by their actions. Jonathan returning to Seoul, telling Sunhu of the $50 billion they made, they were overwhelmed by their progress. With that being said, they start preparing for their next move, and with all their money, it was finally time for Sunhu to secure ownership of the location where the F-rank dungeon was located. Jonathan asking Sunhu if they were also venturing into real estate, Sunhu told Jonathan that from that point on, they would use the money to venture into every possible thing they could make money in. Jonathan, unable to process how $50 billion was not enough, Sunhu made it clear that from that moment on, they will be giving their all into this plan and only rest until all the money in the world was in their grasp. To avoid complications, Sunhu decided that Jonathan would use his share of the money to create multiple companies in different sectors. Elaborating, it needs to be to the point that the people working for the company do not even know who they are actually working for. Sunhu also requested that among all those businesses, he wants one company to be named after his father, Jonil, and have it enter Korea. With this plan in mind, Sunhu and Jonathan moved forward with their goals separately. As Jonathan traveled back to America to recruit trustworthy and hardworking employees and establishing companies to cover their tracks. He started off with the company he once worked at. He barges in telling all his previous co-workers welcome to Jonathan Investment. While everything was going smoothly, Sunha had other things planned in mind. Sunhu rented an office for two reasons: the great security and high-speed internet. Sunhu alone looking as to how to decorate the space. He was moving closer and closer to his goal, as this would be the first outpost. During this time, Jonathan has brought nothing but good news about the ghost companies. Having established a few, he chose 8 of the companies to continue making more, and their plan working so well that the new companies that were being created, not knowing who even ran their company, they just used the provided documents to work. But Sunha also taking into account the almost 1,000 companies they have established as tax havens, it resulted in him having to create and send the funding distribution plan. With all that is happening, Sunha told Jonathan they needed to acquire another company along with their current CEO, Donald Finn. The reason being that the database language Donald Finn and his team created was established as an industry standard in the 1980s. Sunho believes that having Donald Finn on his side would give him an edge in the future against Lee Sun's guild. In the end, Sunho vowed to take away everything the 8 virtues possessed in his past life. After seeing the news about Gold Wish Investment Company's success, Sunho was proud to say that this new big shot entering Korea is merely a ghost company Sunho created. Sunho then leaves the house after a conversation with his mother and goes straight to his office. While inside, Sunho was surrounded by bankers who were clearly flustered by the economic situation they were facing at the moment. Moments after Sunho arrived in his office, Jonathan appeared. Without delay, Sunho immediately went to work and examined the book Jonathan had prepared containing the list of ghost companies they created. Jonathan immediately voices out his concerns about what they are doing. While Sunho agrees that their actions are punishable by law with all the tax evasion. However, he's not really worried about it that much because he can always use money to deal with it. Sunho opening a safe, giving Jonathan a stack of cash, telling him to not use the company's credit cards anymore. He tells him to take a rest and he will see him the next day since they were on vacation. That was when Jonathan noticed Sunho's drawings and thought to himself Sunho was really just a kid. At DP Crump, one of the 4 biggest banks in North America, a member of Jonathan Investments was proposing a seemingly absurd contract that made the heads of the bank hold in their laugh. In the end, the deal was sealed and Jonathan Investments had made another risky investment. Shortly after this, Jonathan tells Sunho that the attack preparation is complete and all the $500 million bets have been made. 2 months later, in October, Sunho paid Jonathan a visit to his office. Frustrated by himself, Jonathan tells Sunho that he's lost track of his losses. With the commotion they stirred in the stock market before, they had to move carefully to avoid being caught. With the current state of Asia's economy, Sunho was certain that Hong Kong would collapse by itself. But Sunho had a plan that both he and Jonathan were going to invest in Hong Kong's stock market to reassure the banks. After putting their plan into action, Sunho and Jonathan instantly faced a dangerous situation. Because of their actions, the Hong Kong stock market started to collapse. After some time, Sunho thought he had stopped the downfall of Hong Kong and preserved the future he remembered. But just as he was about to leave, Jonathan shouted that Sunho was wrong. As the general manager of DP Crump and his colleagues were poking fun at Jonathan Investments' contract, their jaws dropped suddenly as the news announced that the stock market in Hong Kong raised their interest rate by 400%, meaning Jonathan Investments just got the best of them. The reason for Jonathan saying Sunho was wrong was because Sunho only predicted that the interest rate would only go up by 300%. In the end, Hong Kong did the unimaginable and exceeded even Sunho's prediction. With this jackpot, Sunho would amass even more financial power than the people in his original timeline. With his identity still safe and sound, as Jonathan was named the god of investments and confirmed they just knew someone named John Doe held a 51% stake in Jonathan Investments. Jonathan was able to direct the article from knowing too much about them, as if they knew the truth. Sunho and Jonathan would not be 18th and 20th, but 1st and 2nd on the world's billionaire list. Sunho, glad they just dodged a bullet, proceeded to his next plan. Meeting up with Jamie, the former chief investment officer of Wilshire Lands, Sunho hired her on the spot, as he told her the crimes she committed in the past would not be of concern, as her beauty and expertise in real estate have met the requirements. Sunho thought that the crimes she committed was even something he was looking for, along with her beauty and knowledge of the real estate market. Jamie telling Sunho she has not even heard the name of the company she was hired to. Sunho told her Yahello Investments, that is the name of the company you will be the CEO of. With the success Yahello Investment achieved under Jamie's management, Sunho didn't even need to lift a finger or intervene in its progress. As Jamie secured the top dogs in the business industry, her aspirations went beyond real estate, as she knew she could make tons of money from the country's current state. She thanked Sunho for presenting her this great opportunity, as she vowed to make good of the trust he placed in her. Jamie then trying to give her expertise to Sunho regarding the land of the F-rank dungeon. Sunho told Jamie not to cross the line and to always follow the special orders given to her. Since Sunho has decided that he will rarely be involved in Yahello Investments' actions, he has given her the trust that he will fulfill her duties without fail. Sunho thinking making money was definitely needed. The most important thing would ultimately be Korea's dungeons, and many of the special orders she was given were acquiring the properties of these dungeons. As things were going according to plan, Sunhu achieved his goal of purchasing the land on the mountainside. With the progress Sunhu has accomplished, his major focus will now be directed to the location of the dungeon. While Sunhu was waiting for the contractor to arrive, he recalled the experience he had in that very location in his previous life where they were used as pawns by the government to study the dungeons. The contractor arriving, Sunhu told him the details of the construction, and as he finished up, he told him the contractor who would receive this project would be the one who would complete it the fastest, as money did not matter but time did. As night fell, Sunhu's father returned home drunk, devastated by getting fired from his work. The same thing happened in Sunhu's previous life. But this time, the difference is that after getting fired, what Sunhu didn't expect was that his dad would be hired by a company with the same name as his. In his previous life, Sunhu's father was the main reason why he got into the world of finance in the first place. After his first success leading to his overconfidence asking his father for more money, the loss that followed would not just affect him but his father who needed the money back due to being fired. Sunhu, the high schooler exposed to this, learned a lot, and since then, he was fully immersed in finance up until the day of beginnings happened. As the construction began, Sunhu was happy about the progress, deeply trusted the contractor he had hired, and was even happy that his plans were finally taking a solid shape, especially with Jamie's team able to smooth things over for the construction project. The accounting director and judicials affair director of Yahello investment talking about the various people they must talk to for the construction to proceed smoothly. If things were to progress well, their future plans regarding the Daewoo Group would be a great possibility as well. As the world of finance is still stuck in a great big dilemma, Sunhu sat back going over the changes in the timeline and knowing not everything goes according to plan. But everything so far was as he somewhat predicted. He drops an article with the headline reading Daewoo Group's president arrest warrant approved.